There's a truth few people ever say out loud. When you leave a narcissist in silence, no arguments, no complaints, no apologies, and no looking back, that's the moment you force them to face their deepest fear. It's not your anger. It's not your criticism. It's not even your bold confrontation of their mistakes. It's your calm, unwavering silence. The kind that needs no explanation. To a normal person, a breakup might bring sadness, regret, or reflection. But for a narcissist, your departure doesn't hurt as much as your lack of reaction. Because in their distorted psychological world, control isn't just a preference. It's how they maintain their sense of existence. They need your attention, your rage, your tears, your repeated forgiveness to sustain the illusion that they still matter, that they still have power over your emotions. But when you choose absolute silence, no reply, no reaction, no participation in their emotional games, you dismantle the foundation they rely on. This isn't just the end of a relationship. It's a direct blow to the fragile ego they've constructed. There's no more reflection, no more emotional fuel, no one left to affirm the identity they've clung to. And to a narcissist, that's not just confusing. It's a full-blown crisis because you've stopped playing the role in the script they wrote. You're no longer the supporting character in a story where they always played the lead. You go silent. And in that silence, you take back every ounce of control they thought they had. In today's video, we're going deep into the narcissist's mind to understand why your silence terrifies them so profoundly. We'll explore what really happens inside them when you no longer react. When they can't pull you back in, when all their usual tactics fall flat, and most importantly, you'll learn this: silence is not weakness. It is the clearest sign of inner strength, emotional maturity, and real healing. If you're on the journey of freeing yourself from a toxic relationship, if you're learning to let go, not out of hate, but because you've simply had enough, then this video is for you. To understand why silence terrifies a narcissist so deeply, we first need to grasp a core psychological truth about them. Narcissists do not have a stable sense of self. They don't possess a clear, grounded identity. So instead, they build themselves through the emotional reactions of others. They need you to love them, to get angry, to hurt, to lash out. Any emotional response from you, positive or negative, is fuel for the false self they're desperately trying to maintain. This is what psychologists call narcissistic supply. The emotional fuel they constantly seek to control by any means necessary. They live off external validation because, internally, they are empty. In relationships, they use a range of manipulation tactics. One moment they shower you with love and praise, the next they go silent and dismissive. One day you're made to feel like the most important person in their world, and the next, completely worthless. As I'm saying, the goal isn't real emotional intimacy. It's control. Especially control over your emotional responses. As long as you're still reacting, you're still under their influence. Even if you're angry, heartbroken, or demanding closure, they take it as proof that they still matter, that they're still the center of your world, and that gives them a false sense of power and security. But when you stop reacting, when you choose silence over arguing, peace over proving your worth, withdrawal over seeking justice, you do the one thing they are completely unprepared to face. You record without your reactions. The narcissist has no mirror to define themselves, no more supply, and their fragile ego begins to crack. They'll test you. They might send vague messages, like your posts, tell mutual friends they still care, or even badmouth you just to see if you'll respond. Because every action has one goal, to find out whether you still feel something for them. Because if you still react, they still exist in your story. Your silence then isn't just a lack of interaction. It's a powerful message. You no longer get to control how I feel. And to a narcissist, that's the most disorienting declaration of all. They don't know how to handle it because, in their inner world, every connection must revolve around control. Here's the truth. You don't need to beat them. You just need to not engage. Your silence, when it comes from clarity, peace, and resolve, is the most powerful way to reclaim your emotional freedom. And in that silence, the truth begins to reveal itself. They were never as powerful as they pretended to be. And you were never as weak as they made you believe. When a narcissist no longer receives any reaction from you, no messages, no accusations, not even the slightest emotional expression, a quiet internal collapse begins. It's not something anyone can see from the outside. They'll keep up appearances, post smiling photos, and act like everything is fine, but inside, their world is shaking. Your silence isn't just about losing a former partner. For them, it means losing a source of self-affirmation. When you no longer respond, they lose the reflection they once relied on to feel like someone. Narcissists don't have a solid self-image. They define themselves through how others perceive them. And when you stop looking, they start to unravel. One of the first signs is a shift in their behavior. They may begin obsessively watching your online activity, viewing every story, reading every post, analyzing each photo for signs that you still think about them. But this isn't love. It's the desperate reaction of an ego starving for validation. When they can't find any emotional signal from you, they shift into the next phase, rewriting the story. They begin to talk about you to others, but never objectively. They twist the truth, painting themselves as the victim, or alternatively claiming you are too emotional, too unstable, too dramatic to keep around. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to convince themselves that your departure wasn't because of their failure, but because you weren't. The problem is, none of this changes the core truth they're running from. You left, and you're no longer under their emotional control. This is when they start experiencing a psychological breakdown. It's not loud or dramatic, but it's real and dangerous. They feel out of control, not just over you, but over themselves. Emptiness creeps in, restlessness, anxiety, and they begin to rely on conflicting self-soothing behaviors, putting on a happy front while secretly spiraling in confusion and fear. Instead of facing the emotional wound, the narcissist runs from it. They chase a replacement. They bury themselves in work. They stir up conflict just to feel noticed, or they plunge into shallow relationships to fill the void. But nothing works because the real issue lies within. They are losing their grip on the false identity they built. The less you respond, the more they're forced to confront themselves. And for someone who has never learned to accept their flaws, never developed emotional maturity, and never learned how to sit with real feelings, this kind of inner confrontation feels like a psychological shockwave. You don't need to witness it. You don't need to go back to check if they're okay. Because if you truly understand them, you know this. The only thing that ever kept them together was their ability to control your emotions. And now that this power is gone, their collapse is inevitable. Silence after walking away from a narcissist isn't just about not wanting to talk anymore. It's a clear and powerful expression of something far deeper. You've grown emotionally. You no longer act from emotional reflex. You act from a place of awareness, grounded in your self-worth, your personal boundaries, and your need to heal. Throughout the relationship, you may have tried so hard to be understood, to hold things together. You forgave, explained, even blamed yourself for the distance and chaos in the relationship. And when those efforts went unanswered, you entered a season of deep pain. But eventually, you no longer needed an apology. You no longer needed validation. You didn't need anyone to confirm that you were treated unfairly. Instead, you chose silence. And that silence didn't come from weakness. It came from conscious strength. An emotionally immature person argues, tries to prove their point, refuses to let go until they get something that satisfies their ego or soothes their emotional wounds. But someone who has matured understands not everyone is capable of seeing things clearly, and the only thing they can truly control is themselves. By choosing silence, you've withdrawn the need to be seen, to be understood, or to be treated fairly by someone who never had any intention of offering that in the first place. You've stepped out of their narrative. You no longer want to play a game where you are never meant to win. You walked away, not because you lost, but because the game no longer mattered to you. Emotional maturity also reveals itself in the moment you realize your inner peace is more valuable than winning any argument. You chose silence, not to manipulate them in return, but because you now understand. Any words at this point would only pull you back into a space you've already outgrown. The narcissist feels that they sense that you're no longer reacting, no longer blaming, no longer trying to make them see the truth. And in that, they recognize, though they'll never admit it, that you're out of their control. You're no longer the person who could be reeled back in with one message. No longer the person swayed by a fake apology or a casual manipulative question. You've become solid. And that solidity terrifies them because they know, once you've reached emotional maturity, you never return to who you were. There's no more one last chance. No more, we need to talk. No more, I still miss you. You need nothing from them now. And for someone who survives by feeding off others to sustain their ego, that's the most crushing blow of all. You don't need to say you've changed. They can feel it in your silence. A silence that isn't cold, isn't hateful, isn't meant to harm. But a silence that comes from someone who has understood enough, heard enough, and grown enough drops interior. And so the claim that narcissists and narcissists aren't heard from the audience before them. And when you walk away from a narcissist in silence, you're not just ending a relationship, you're stripping them of control. And to a narcissist, losing control is the same as losing themselves. They won't sit quietly. They will reclaim the power they feel they've lost. In the beginning, they'll often use subtle tactics to test you. A short message like, "Just wanted to see if you're okay." A familiar song sent through social media. A photo that brings back an old memory. These aren't signs of love. They're emotional probes. They want to know, are you still reactive? Can you still be pulled back in? If you respond, even with just a single line, in their mind, it means, I still have control over you. But if you remain silent, they won't stop. They'll escalate to the next phase, a louder, more public version. At this stage, you might see them suddenly acting overly happy, posting photos with someone new, writing vague, attention-grabbing captions like, "Finally free to be myself," or "Not everyone deserves your energy." Everything is carefully curated to send you one message, "I'm better off without you." But if you look closer, you'll realize it's not real. Truly happy people don't try to prove it. Truly peaceful people don't need to broadcast it. These behaviors don't stem from strength. They come from concealed panic. They're trying to salvage their image in the eyes of others and, more desperately, in their own. If you continue to stay silent, they may resort to more negative tactics. They'll start talking badly about you to mutual friends, twisting the story so that you become the villain. It's not because they want to destroy you. It's because they can't accept the truth, that you left because of their behavior. They need a different narrative, a different reason, anything to avoid facing themselves. Some narcissists will even attempt to rebrand. They might pretend to be remorseful, act self-aware, and ask to talk one last time for closure. But be careful. This isn't genuine growth. It's the beginning of the cycle again. Get you back, only to manipulate you again. They're not seeking peace. They're seeking a way back into the center of your emotional world. More frighteningly, when all attempts to reestablish control fail, the narcissist may spiral into extreme behavior. They might become colder, more toxic, or, on the flip side, portray themselves as broken and vulnerable, as if they're falling apart. Either way, the goal is the same: to make you feel responsible enough to return. But this is when you must remember something vital. You owe them nothing. You've already given them chances. You've opened your heart, forgiven, tried to reconnect. And now your silence isn't avoidance. It's the final boundary to protect yourself. Every tactic they use, every time they try to stir your emotions, is proof that they know you mattered. They just never had the maturity to treat that truth with the respect it deserved. You don't need to reply. You don't need to explain. Your consistent, calm, non-vengeful silence is how you take your life back. And that is the one thing they cannot accept, but also cannot undo. There's one thing a narcissist will never say, not to you, not to others, and not even to themselves. They are terrified of being forgotten. Not in the ordinary sense of loneliness or sadness, but in a way that makes them feel like they no longer exist. What they fear most is not being in your mind anymore, not being able to stir your emotions, not having their words, actions, or presence make any impact on your life. For a narcissist, identity isn't built from within. It's constructed through external reflection. Who they are depends entirely on how others perceive them. And when you no longer look their way, it strikes at the heart of their deepest insecurity. I don't matter anymore. I have no value. I am nothing. But you'll never hear them admit that. Instead, they'll pretend you weren't worth remembering. They might mock you, belittle you in front of others, or treat your departure as a weak and laughable act. They'll craft a perfect image of themselves, more successful, more joyful, more adored after you walked away. Those words and actions aren't signs of peace. They're shields. Defensive layers used to hide the inner wound they can't admit exists. Because to acknowledge your departure had any real impact would mean facing the truth about themselves. If they admitted you mattered, they'd have to ask why. They'd have to confront the reality that you once brought them stability, made them feel valuable, gave them a sense of meaning. And in doing so, they'd have to face the one truth they've always denied. They were the one who ruined it. The narcissist's hidden fear isn't just being left. It's losing the ability to rewrite the story. In their mind, they are always either the victim or the victor. They don't know how to live with the reality that someone left without explanation, without clarity, without their permission. When you do that, you shatter the entire psychological defense system they've relied on their whole life. That's why they can't bear your silence. Not because they miss you in the romantic sense of longing for sweet memories, but because you become living proof of something they can't control. And your existence in freedom, in calm, in wholeness without them reflects back the emptiness they refuse to face within themselves. Whether they say it out loud or not, narcissists feel deeply that you're not like the others. Because others can be pulled back. Others can be manipulated with guilt, promises of change, or fear of abandonment. But not you. And that makes you an invisible threat to the psychological system they depend on for survival. You don't need them to admit it. You don't need any kind of validation because their inability to let you go in their mind, their confusion, their contradictory behaviors is all the proof you'll ever need that you made a far greater impact than any words could ever express. And what they fear most isn't losing you. It's losing their ability to control you forever. It's time to look back on your journey with honesty and pride. You didn't scream to be heard. You didn't beg to prove your worth. You didn't cling to the hope of a graceful ending just to ease the pain. You chose silence. And that was no easy choice. But in doing so, you showed that you've grown. You've healed. And you've entered a whole new phase of life. One where you no longer live in reaction, but in intention. Maybe the narcissist once called you too sensitive, too weak, too emotional. Maybe they made you believe you were the problem, that you weren't enough, that you were the one who needed fixing. But now you know the truth. You weren't weak. You loved deeply. You weren't unstable. You were hurt because you trusted the wrong person in the right way. And you don't need to change to be loved. You just need to love yourself enough to walk away from where love is no longer honored. Your silence isn't punishment. It's not manipulation. It's not about power. It's a simple yet profound declaration. I don't have to repeat the cycle of pain anymore. It's a choice rooted in awareness, in clarity, in the self-respect that you've fought so hard to rebuild. You don't need others to understand you in order to feel worthy. You don't need an apology to forgive. And you don't need to see the narcissist fall apart to know that you are right. All you need is to keep moving forward calmly, clearly, without looking back. Because the path ahead is not for anyone else. It's for you, for your healing, and for the inner freedom you so deeply deserve. If you've ever wondered, do they regret it? Do they feel the loss? Know that the answer isn't in their words. It's in their confusion, their contradictions, their inability to let go. But what matters more is this: you no longer need to know. Because the moment you stop needing a response to validate your worth, that's the moment you become truly free. Today, if you're healing in silence, learning not to react, focusing on yourself, you are exactly where you're meant to be. Every day you hold that silence is not a day of doing nothing. It's a day of rebuilding trust with yourself, reinforcing your boundaries, and proving that you can choose peace over chaos. The narcissist may never admit what you meant. They may deny it, distort it, or ignore it altogether. But you don't need their acknowledgement. You know you loved with everything you had. You gave until there was nothing left, and you walked away when there was nothing left to fight for. That isn't failure. That's growth. They may collapse. They may repeat the cycle with someone else. But you, the one who chose silence, who walked away, who didn't go back, you're stronger than they ever imagined. And now you no longer have to prove it with words, because your unwavering silence says it all.